Hey guys, welcome to the Mark Neely Show. I've got some great friends that I've known for some time now and so excited to have them on. I've got Ken and Kayla Franse from 10 Oaks Real Estate, and we're going to be talking all about how you guys got started today. Guys, thanks for coming on.
Absolutely.
I was trying to think, how long have we known each other? Has it been 10 years?
Yeah, probably going on 10 years now, Mark.
Yeah. And so we met at church, right?
We did.
We met at church, Christ Community, just down the road, and I want to say it seems like everyone's gone to Christ Community at some point in their lives in Franklin.
That's right. If you live in Franklin, you've been there.
Right.
That's right.
So, but gosh, I've watched your guys' journey. I don't want to steal your thunder. Tell me just kind of how you guys got started, because you didn't always do real estate, right?
That's right. Yeah. No, I started in real estate. I got my license for the first time in 2007. So I was working for a real estate marketing company. It was an easy transition. Of course, everything was riding high right before the crash there in 2008. Mm-hmm. And that's when I first started. I weathered that storm a little bit. That's kind of a little bit of a long story, but
was that in Knoxville?
That was back in East Tennessee, back in Knoxville, where I originated from. Yes, sir.
Cool.
But yeah, worked out. It was a little tough, but it was a pretty easy transition. Something I always wanted to do. And I kind of fell in love with the industry. Did a lot of commercial real estate to begin with, a lot of speculative land, and honestly, anything I could kind of claw onto during those times, because I had to build my business a little bit through the that economic downturn of 2008. So, it was unique. It was not the way most people build their business. I had to jump around and kind of hustle a little bit, but here we are, 14, 15, 16 years later, it worked out for us.
Was that tenure, how long did that go?
Probably 6 years or so. And then I kind of took a little bit of a hiatus, jumped into another business, opened another business, did that. And of course, but the pool of real estate kind of pulled me back in 2018. Right. And then kind of just things took off.
What about you, Kayla?
Well, I stayed at home. I was a stay-at-home mom for a long time, like 12 years. And then he did real estate. We moved here. And then he went back into real estate. And what brought us here, and originally kind of that door closed. And so then I was like, well, I'm either going to go back to school. I was bored. Our kids were all in school at the time. And so I was like, I'm not needed in that same capacity. So I looked at going back to school to get my nursing degree, and I was counseled by several people that know me very well and know the industry really well. They're like, don't do it. Just don't do it. You'll regret it.
Nursing.
And not because of the field, just because because my kids are older. And they're like, you're going to miss out on a lot, and your kids are going to know you miss out on. They're older now. So, so at that time he was back into real estate, and he was just like, why don't you just come do real estate with me? I was like, okay. So I just signed up for, that was in October. I signed up for classes in November of 2019.
Yeah. Okay.
Right before everything got crazy.
Right. Yes, it seems to be a theme.
The global shutdown.
It's like
we get into real estate, and then big events happen.
So that was November of 2019. I finished class and then got my license after everything was said, after all the testing in January and right before everything shut down. So
what was that like?
I mean, it was weird, but I think I had an outlet to get out. So it made, and I was eager to get out. I wasn't like an agent for 20 years who was just like, I'll just ride this and whatever. I was just like, well, no, I'm going to hustle out there and get out there. So it gave me a reason to get out. So
masks, just and stuff like that with showing houses, or
that didn't happen until the summer. I feel like that really didn't. Masks, distancing was definitely a thing in the spring of 2020, but masks really didn't happen until the summer. And then we kind of we adapted, and we did wear, we wore masks, and we limited the amount of people you could have in a house or whatever.
Yeah, open houses were odd.
They were definitely
there for
different.
A while.
But actually, the benefit of maybe COVID and all that stuff in 2020 was it made it easier to gather somebody's information. So, you used to have an open house little sheet. They'd write their information on it. Who wants to give you their information? Right. Well, this way, you didn't have to touch anything. You didn't have to write your name down. You just either had a little QR code they could scan, or you just exchange information right on the spot, and it gave you a contact. And a door to kind of keep up with those people. So
I do think COVID streamlined some things, right? I mean, just from
yeah.
the standpoint of Zoom calls, things like, Zoom.
Probably from an efficiency standpoint, it made you become, because you had to keep the same level of effectiveness, but do it in a more efficient manner. So I think for sure, and I think a lot of technology and a lot of tech platforms kind of came from that too, and kind of helped with that efficiency. So yeah, I mean, there definitely were some pros, but it made things tough. But at first, that's all she knew. That we've had that conversation. Kind of the same thing for me when I first entered it. That's all you know. Like, that's the only real estate life she knew until things kind of got back to a bit of a normal market, So, I mean, if that's all you know, it's all you know. It's kind of relative. So you just adapt and go with it, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So what's like the biggest benefit of being a husband-wife team working together as a married couple?
Man,
we were talking about this on the way over here. We spend an inordinate amount of time together, and I would say most couples don't do that. Most couples probably wouldn't be married still if they just spend every waking second together. But yeah, we actually really like it.
I would say it's the same that in any other area of my life. She fills gaps where I'm weak, right? Like and I have some deficiencies, believe it or not. I know that everyone's probably shocked to hear that, but I definitely have deficiencies, and she's definitely strong where those are. In fact, when it comes to the nuts and bolts of just being an agent, I think she's way better at it than I am. She's a much better multitasker. I think she has a level of customer service or not of thoughtfulness that maybe I don't with clients. Where I definitely can and kind of steer the ship a little bit more of a 30,000 foot view of like where the business is going, what we're going to be doing when it comes to the nuts and bolts. She's really good at that part of it.
I would say I'm definitely the relational aspect of it. I'm really good at like creating, like I'm friends with a lot of clients, like still keep up with them 4 years later on a pretty regular basis. And so that's what I try to do just because I want to be top of mind whatever they do. But I also genuinely have come to know people's kids and their grandkids and what they do and where they go. So we'll go grab a drink or we'll go have lunch and just catch up every now and then. So, yeah.
So what was it like to get started when you first got started?
Man, well, I mean, getting started in 2020 was quite different than I'd say most people. But
you working how are you getting your leads?
Well, when I first started, for sale by owners were my main point of leads right there. So you'd just jump on the phone and call a for sale by owner and go see a house. And I think I had my first, I was officially licensed at the end of January in 2020. And I think I had my first listing February 23rd or something like that of 2020.
Really?
And it was a for sale by owner. Yeah.
You sold that one?
I did sell it. Yeah.
That's impressive.
And it was tough. I mean, it was probably, I mean, they always say like one of your first deal is one of your toughest deals. And it was
just a hard
tough.
deal.
I mean, it was there was a lot of stuff in there.
I remember that was a tough deal, but also just your first one because you just don't know what you don't
Trial
know.
by fire.
Right. It's kind of baptism
curve,
by fire for sure. Because there's no classroom training. None of that can really, people who do real estate, they know this. I mean, people in the industry, but it's just nothing can prepare you for what really goes into that transaction. So
yeah, so for sale by owners were my main lead source for probably the first year and a half or so. And I still do it here and there, but not as often. But yeah, for sale by owners my first two deals were for sale by owners.
Yeah. And they're getting called a lot, I'm sure. So
they do,
great.
and that's the relationship aspect is creating some kind of bond with these people that someone else didn't create. I'm not just, you're not necessarily another number in my phone. I genuinely have a desire to help you achieve what your goal is, and trying to figure out how to get to that goal is
right.
What we're trying to do. So.
That's right.
You talked about like the positives. What are the challenges like working together?
Again, I think a lot of those kind of intertwine with everything else. I mean, we spend an inordinate amount of time together.
Same answer.
Yeah, I mean, kind of. I mean, right? Mm-hmm. It's just again, it's a relationship thing, right? We just like we really like each other, right? Like a lot, but we also are a married couple that have our spats, and sometimes there are things that are more than spats, right? Like it just happens. And I think more is that the challenge is that it's not necessarily working together. It's just spending that much time together and then needing an outlet for yourself, or like being able to do that like in your own time. Mm-hmm. You know, like we want to get, most married couples come together in the evening with the kids, all that kind of stuff. We do that. We're together all day, and then we got to stay together, and then we're doing, you know, sometimes just like everyone else, you kind of want, man, I just need a little time to myself. I just want to go for a drive, or I want, you know, go for a hike, whatever your outlet is. Go play golf. You know.
Yeah, so I would say we work together. I mean, we're around each other, especially during the week, during work hours, 85 to 90% of the time. But like yesterday, I was like, hey, I'm going to a coffee shop. I'm going to work at a coffee shop. He was like, I'm going to stay here. Like he's more productive at home, and I'm much more productive outside the home. Like I can, it's just a different venue for me. I like to do it and get out of the house.
So do you have like certain roles, or do you kind of do everything together?
For the most part, we do everything together. There are things that I do prefer that she handle. Like, I feel like she's always really good at first touches with clients. We can tag team them unless we're on opposite sides of deals, which we have done before. That's always kind of fun and interesting. But for the most part, it's a little bit of mix. We do a little bit of it all, but there are definitely things that she's better at, and there are things that I'm better at that we kind of naturally gravitate to. But yeah,
we have it. We do we get paid leads, and so we tried to, you know, the first touch is something he's like, hey, I'd rather you'd be the first touch than me. So if at all possible, I take the first touch.
She's just, I don't know if it's the maternal thing. She's really good at delivering bad news to clients too. Like, you know, sometimes you walk into a house and it smells like dog, or it smells like ant, or, you know, I don't know what it is, but coming from her, maybe it's because she's a mom of 5, like that maternal, like when she says it softens it, when I can say the same thing and it seems
abrasive or harsh.
Yeah. So I think that there's just roles like that you play. Yeah,
you gotta understand that.
Yeah, for sure.
So I mean, like, how do you balance, you know, personal life and work? You're working together a lot. You've got kids at home. What's that like?
I guess I think we do it pretty well.
Yeah, but how do we do it? That's the question.
Well, I think our industry leads to a lot of flexibility in our schedule. So we do day dates a lot. You know, we'll go to lunch. You know, sometimes, you know, we just will take the afternoon off, and we're like, hey, we don't have anything going, so we're going to go do this. Or, hey, I'm going to go play 9 holes. You want to come drive the golf cart? Or, you know, I'm trying to get her into golf now, but that's kind of the thing. But that's kind of how we balance it. I mean, we just...
Or if you need your own space, we do the same thing. We try to do it during the day when our kids aren't home. Like, if our kids are going to be home at night, or we have soccer, or what school meetings, or whatever's happening, we try to do those things. If I want to go get my nails done, or I want to go do something, I try to do it during the day. And so he'll do this. He'll go play golf during the day. Like, we don't always do things. We try to do a lot of things together. But if we're going to do those things, we need me time. We try to do them during the day when our kids are at school.
But yeah, we just balance those things out just because our schedule allows. It's a little different than what most people with the schedule looks like, because our schedule looks a little bit different. But yeah, we do. I think we do a pretty good job of balancing that, and then having our own time, and then, you know, our week's not just us doing business together. You know, I guess that's what I'm trying to say. So
I mean, so it sounds like you're able to sort of, you know, segment it where it doesn't just all blend together. It's like, where does work end and where does life begin, and vice versa.
I would say work and life we still have that. It's hard for me to say no to things even at night. Like, I tell my clients, like, I'm up late, I don't care. And I know most people don't have the job we have, right? They don't have the hours we have. And so I always tell people, listen, I'm up until like 10. You're welcome to text me or call me until then. You can text me later, but I probably won't answer. So I still think it is still hard. It's a hard balance. And there are times where there was a couple of, like, probably a year or two ago, where I had deals that fell apart, like big deals that fell apart, one right after another. And I was like, anxious and upset. And I was like, I mean, nothing I could have done to save any of them, but it's the first deal that I ever lost. And so trying to balance that, like, it's okay, like, I've got to take care of me kind of situation. That was hard, but I mean, you learn through it and you work through it. And, but yeah, the work-life balance is still hard. You just have to know, when you've worked a lot, you've got to take a break, whether it's with your spouse or with your kids or just for yourself. You got to walk away for a couple hours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 10 Oaks, how did you plug in there?
Man, so when I first went back into the industry, 2018, I was researching, hey, where do I go? I didn't want, I was just starting back out. And I just shuttered the doors of another business. So I was like, I'm not going to start my own thing again right now. I'm not in the headspace for that, like building something else. So I was like, so let's look at some shops, look at some brokers. And I found one I was really close to joining, and then just happenstance. Actually,
we met him.
Yeah, I hadn't shuttered the business yet. He'd walked into our bar and restaurant that we had owned, and the broker for 10 Oaks. He had just moved here from Oklahoma City. Great guy, Brandon Baca. And Kayla was just talking to him, and she's like, "Oh, my husband's in the process of getting back into the, He's like, "I just moved here." You know how that conversation goes at the bar. There's, just small talk. Mm-hmm. And he's like, "Oh, hey man, I'd really like to talk to him." I'm like, "Sure." I'm always like, everything's worth a conversation, right? That's kind of how I live my life. You never know it. The opportunity may not be for you, but right. Most things are worth a conversation. So I was like, "Sure, I'll talk to him." And we just kind of clicked. We hit it off. I liked the philosophy and the ethos of everything that they were building and what he was trying to do. And there's just been no reason to leave 10 Oaks. They've treated me well. We've flourished, and I love the like I said, the ethos of the company and
the training and education is. I mean, I've never been a part of another brokerage ever.
Yeah, that's
I've
true.
seen him through a couple, but I mean, it seems quite. It's one of the things I think that sets 10 Oaks apart from maybe any other brokerage is the education and the training and the help that you get throughout your time there. It doesn't seem like anybody else does that.
Yeah, good. Just been a good fit.
That's great.
Good fit. Yeah.
That's great. I mean, what do you see? I mean, as far as strategies right now, just to stay competitive, because it's ever changing. What's this year seems similar to last year, but leading into last year, there was a lot of pain. I still think there's pain. I mean, rates, but I think people are getting used to this environment. It seems to me of just interest rates.
Yeah, I think that you're kind of settling back into the kind of this is the new norm, which to me, honestly, I mean, rates are higher than they have been, but I don't think they're not historically like out of whack. So I don't think rates are the issue. But since like that Q3, Q4 of 2023 were really tough. 2024 was tough for the industry overall. We weathered it pretty well, and 2025 seems to be pretty good as well, I think, for us. But I think what people forget is that it's still work. People kind of get I don't know if it's like the HGTV kind of ization of the industry. But a lot of people think you get your real estate license, you put a sign in the yard, and money just kind of comes to you.
Yeah.
Right? Like there's a lot of work that goes into it, and lead generation is the number one job of any real estate agent.
That's your only job, really.
It's really I mean, you've got customer service, you're showing homes, you're writing contracts, but lead generation is the number one thing and the most important thing. So you have to have a pretty decent process for that in play. If you have that and you execute that, you're going to be successful. Now, you're always going to scale of what that level of success looks like. But if you do those few little things, you're going to make a living in this business. It's just not. I always tell people it's not easy. It's simple.
Right.
It's hard work, but it's not brain surgery.
It's simple tasks. You just have to be consistent about them.
Certain price points right now, you think struggling more than others?
It seems like that what I call what I label in this area kind of baby luxury is kind of the ones that it's the higher end.
It's like under $1 million, but above 5.
Well, I would say even maybe a little more like that $1.5 million to $3 million, where it's still a really, even then that's a very high budget even in this area, right? Even in there. However, it's the higher end version that people still tend to finance. When you get to the $6, $7, $8 million properties, a lot of those are cash deals, unless there's some creative financing for tax purposes or whatever. But in that higher end, what I like to say called baby luxury, I think that's been struggling for a minute. I think your lower price points, like the entry level price points, in the Nashville metro area are still moving pretty good, up to about $750, $800. I still think are moving pretty good. A lot of activity around those properties.
I mean, I have my thoughts on that. I mean, I'd love to hear yours. I think it's maybe a sense of urgency. It's finally seeping in that, hey, we're not going to have a market crash in this area, and perhaps even nationwide. For the math just doesn't play out that way because of the shortage of inventory. So I think, like anything in stocks and people in real estate, it's kind of like, well, they'll wait on the sidelines till something gets better. And better meaning in this case, like prices go down or rates go down, where after a period, now we've sort of been into this for a long enough period of time that I think that it's more and more people are starting to just enter the market and like, hey, this is it. So I guess we better do this. We're going to do this,
Yeah. What do you think? What are your thoughts?
I think the election didn't help last year. That was a huge
distraction.
I think it was maybe a distraction, but it also,
yeah.
I would say it made people uneasy, or they wanted to see what was going to happen. If so-and-so gets elected, what's going to happen here? And if it happens the other way, what are they going to do? And so, I had multiple clients that were like, we're not buying
until the election.
Yeah. Or if we go under contract, our close date has to be after the election in case we want to drop out. And I was like,
right.
Okay, well, and so I think after that is when really you weather the whole election, and then you have the holidays, which is always a lull anyway. But I think after that is when the doors kind of like opened up, and people kind of, I think people kind of got off their butts and were like, okay, we're not. And I also think, to your point earlier when you're talking about interest rates, there's a lot of uneducated people out there just talking about, they're like, oh, we wish we had a 2.5 rate or 3 rate, whatever it was. I'm like, if you get that again, there's something bad happening. You really probably don't want. I know you want that financially.
They're just unaware.
They're not aware that that's what it takes
to
to get to that rate point. And so, educating people about, how can you get a lower rate, or, what are things that you can do to kind of achieve a lower rate for your 30 is really helpful.
Right. Buy downs, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the thing now is, it seems to me that sellers are just more negotiable. So,
I feel like they have to be.
So you're seeing concessions, and so they use that, buy the rate down. It's really the payment that someone's purchasing, really.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what, can I afford this payment?
Yeah.
That's funny you say. I've had conversations before, because I think the way people buy homes in the future is going to be more based on payment, kind of like they buy cars, right? Because that's how people buy things now. The purchase power is the monthly payment. That's that's like the measurement of it, right? You're not looking, I paid X amount for the house. No one really knows what they paid for their car. They're like, I got it it's costing, it's $893 a month or whatever. That's what, I think that's how I think that's kind of going to be more of the model, which may end up helping, people in your industry, because it might get over that. It's just a way to get over that large number and realize that people can get off the sidelines and realize they can afford things they don't realize they can afford as well, from a home perspective. But no,
it's interesting. We're still having conversations with some folks just about car payments, because a car is it's not something that helps you in terms of longevity. It's just it gets you from point A to point B, but the math is, $700 car payment. That's $100,000 in purchasing power. So, half of that's 50,000. So it just depends. It's just amazing that. My dad was in the car business, and he was in the luxury car business, and so that's what sent me to college. And I appreciated people buying new, Lincoln Mercuries, Lincolns and things like that.
Of course.
But at the same time, I grew up knowing that that's not the way to go. We never, he had a demo that he drove, but we never owned a new car because he knew better.
Well, it's a priority thing. It's like again, it's an education. People listen. I like nice cars too. I love nice cars, but I'm in my mid 40s and I've bought one new car for myself ever, like one brand new car ever because I'm just like, to me, I'm trying to put my money more into like the real, like my house is worth something though, right? Like putting your money into assets that are appreciating assets. Everyone likes a nice car, but you can also buy a 4-year-old car that's still really nice and spend a half the money. And then, like you said, your DTI it changes the entire math on what you can now afford from a real estate perspective or an investment real estate perspective. That's another thing right now. Investors have been sitting on the sidelines a little too, and I think they're coming back into the market a little bit.
Right.
So.
Right. Individual and institutional.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure.
I think those election years, the volatility and uncertainty of those things just tends to push people, which is why I think January and February of this year, you still saw that lower transaction number like you've seen over the last probably 12 to 18 months. But I think the floodgates, I think you're going to see a flurry of activity between now and the fall. I don't think it's going to peak. I just don't see from what we've seen, and maybe this might be anecdotal. Maybe I should kind of maybe back off and say I don't know about this from a macro perspective. I'm just saying from our personal business, I see that. I see a lot of that now, kind of that dump truck kind of starting to empty.
Well, for this area too, we had a lot of inclement weather. The last couple of months. And so
it's been a roller coaster.
It's not the north where they just, I guess, show homes with feet of snow, I guess. But it's just a different...
They never really know what the yard looks like, I guess.
It's a different life,
They hibernate here when it gets cold and snowy, so yeah.
So I do think that's true. I think as we move into the spring and the summer, we're going to see... a lot of movement. So what are some maybe like a particularly challenging transaction or something you've worked on together? You mentioned earlier that you've been on opposite sides. That's interesting. I don't think I knew that.
We're on the opposite side right now of one.
We are, that's right. It closes on Friday.
Yeah.
I'll call your agent and find out, what's going on. Hey.
I feel like you've had more challenging.
I think that comes with the nature of going after for sale by owners. I think those in and of themselves are challenging. So I think if that's the avenue that you choose to go, then you definitely you're more likely to run into some challenging things. Man, what's the most challenging?
Well, listen, I say it's worth it. It's still a transaction. It's a lot of
education.
It's a really great learning experience.
Yeah.
So, but they can be more challenging for sure.
Man, what's the most challenging one I've ever had? I don't even know. Honestly, maybe my first one.
What was challenging about that? What was one aspect of it?
Oh man,
sounds like there were a lot of layers.
Yeah, they lived together, but they were moving to Texas and separating, but trying to live together, and it was very volatile. It was very.
Both were on the.
Yeah, they
were on the title, on the deed.
Yeah, they both. Well, actually, no. So, this is something you learn. I didn't know what to look for. I found out when it came to close time, she was actually the only one on the house. But I didn't think to look at that ahead of time. But he was very, he drank a lot. And so if I was over there, he had been drinking for hours. It was dirty. There was stuff everywhere. My broker and Ken came over one day right before we listed the house to help clean up. There was no cleaning. There was no amount of cleaning that was going to make that house better. It didn't really matter what we did. So yeah, that was just, it's really hard to tell someone their house is dirty and gross and hey, you have too much stuff in here. Like, that's a really hard place. It's easy to tell someone like, hey, you need to declutter. That's not a hard thing for me to talk about. But when your house is really gross and dirty,
A different
it's
level
a really
of, yeah.
level. It's a different level of like customer service. You're like, oh, I don't know how to say. I don't know how to say this kindly. You do, but you find a way. But it's definitely it's a little difficult. So that's probably my hardest. I mean, maybe just because it was my first deal.
I think maybe being put on the spot, you're not remembering, but she has a reputation of getting very, very hard transactions done. It's like a thing. I guarantee if you called our broker, he'd be like, he's a few times I know where I've gone, Kayla, I think I think this thing's done. I think it's toast. I think it's, I don't know. And she called the brokers telling her the same thing, and at least twice. And she pulled through and got it closed. And we're like, what?
That one specifically. Not only was the listing hard, but the very end, they were in pre-foreclosure.
Yeah.
And so we didn't think they had enough wiggle room with the purchase price that we had under contract with what they owed to close. We were like $2,500 short. And so the mortgage company was giving us this number that didn't make any sense. We found out the number was a little off, so that helped a little bit. The agent and I ended up splitting this $2,500. We ate it. She wasn't happy about it. I was just happy to close it. I didn't really care. But my broker was like, you're just gonna have to walk away. I mean, I remember sitting on our back porch. I was in like May of 2020, like on the phone with their mortgage company, on the phone with our title company, trying to figure out how we could make this work. And we ended up closing later that day. And I came and met our broker with the check that day of closing paperwork, and he was like, what, you actually closed this? And I was like, yep, sure did. So yeah, I
mean, it's just to get that first win.
It was just the first one. Like, I'm not letting this go. And I will say I tried. I mean, again, when my first two deals ever fell apart, it's probably hard because it had never happened to me. And then two big ones fell apart back to back, and that was just like devastating. But I was like, I don't let things fall apart. If I can save it, I'll save it. It didn't work.
There's always the behind the scenes. Some transactions can be tough, but our job as agents is to go, you don't want your clients to see that, right? Your clients, you want them to go, hey, you want them to think it was easy. Like, that's the goal. Sometimes you have to have those hard conversations because something in the negotiation, the other team's not playing ball or whatever, or maybe your clients aren't playing ball, right? Because we've all had those, but there's always things that make things.
Or maybe the agent moves the fridge into the house
tough.
And scratches the floor. No,
you never know.
I wasn't even in real estate at the time. When he had to replace a fridge for some reason, we had to go pick this fridge up at whatever, and he brought it in the house and scratches the whole floor.
Oh, no.
There's always things.
It was a whole it closed.
Things that are bad, things that are funny. I mean,
always an adventure.
I've backed over a prospect's mailbox before, and I had to replace. So then I'm like, I'm trying to get this listing. And then I have to call them because they weren't in the house. They'd already moved out. And I was just going by to take a look at it and then have a conversation with them afterwards. And then I have to call them and tell them, hey, it was rainy. They had a pod in the drive. It was really narrow. And I didn't see it. And I just hit the mailbox. And,
it's a $400 mailbox, but you got a listing.
But I got the listing. So, there's always hilarious stories. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what's your guys' approach to maintaining long-term relationships with clients? In this business, in your business?
I'll defer to you on this one too, because you're good at. It's just we.
Well, I would say you're good at the whole. I don't love we have a CRM. We both have an account. I don't know that I've ever logged into mine. So all of my data goes into his account because he's really good at inputting that, at least. Well, not necessarily inputting it. He's good at once it's in there. He can send out a newsletter. We've started doing a newsletter once a week. And so he's better about having all those contacts in there once they get in there and sending that out. I don't even want to log into the CRM because it's just not something I enjoy. So that's one aspect of it. We've tried to be really good about inputting our information there. The other part of relationships is just constantly, just randomly, especially holidays or around close when they close on their house or whatever. I'll just try to touch base with them. After closing, I always bring a meal. My thing is I bring a meal. I bring a meal the day after you move in or a couple of days after.
I like that. That's cool.
And so I do it from a little local place in Spring Hill. And so I try to bring part of my community. We do a lot in Spring Hill and Columbia, and so it's easy for me to like bring that business and say, hey, this is from this place. And so I bring them a meal, and then I have a touch point again a few weeks later. Like after they've been there, maybe 2 to 4 weeks later, I'll touch base again. I'll drop in, and then I just keep up, like usually just via text. I mean, all of my clients text pretty regularly or pretty frequently with me, and so I'll just text with them and see how they're doing. And you know, whether it's like this for Valentine's Day, I did little cupcakes for the women and just dropped them by, and little things like that. Just little things. It's nothing big. It's just the thought.
Yeah,
So,
it's nothing, and that's the thing. It doesn't have to be grandiose. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. It's just being thoughtful and go, hey, you're not just a transaction, right? Like that's the whole idea. Is one thing I think we're both good at is that just building rapport. Like not even building rapport. Like, hey, people want to think that you care. Well, it's not that I don't want them to think that we care. I want them to know that we care, right? I want them to, because we actually really do. That's kind of, I don't think that's something you can fake, because we're not the team. Even when we had a team of a dozen agents, right? I'm not the guy who's out there doing a ton of video, and I probably should. It's definitely one of those things I probably need to. Let's say there's room for improvement. It's an opportunity for me, but it's not been me so far, right? So we've built our business not doing those more traditional things. It's more just we take care of people, we love people, and our sphere and past clients tend to feed us or refer us. I mean, that's kind of where, and it's work. So it's kind of like, I want to add the other things, but I don't want to overload us to where we lose what made us successful, right? So you want to keep time and enough, what's the word I'm looking for? Enough enough capital to go, I need personal touches with these people too, not just database work with emails and text, mass text messages and things like that. It has its place, but those personal touches have really furthered our business.
Making your people feel important, but also providing value to not even your people that could be your clients, like the community. Like I would say that's one thing that our brokerage specifically our broker is very good at, doing events that are definitely community wide, and they reach lots of different age levels and price brackets and just people in general. Right. And so what is he doing next? I think he's doing something this week. It's like a dumpster and moving truck and whatever. I mean, it's just little things like that he put out there for his community, and he's doing it, and anybody can benefit from it. So
yeah, I'm the guy that's like, I'm not above giving free advice to someone. I don't care if you're not now listen, I've got to be careful if you have an agency agreement with someone else, that I'm not trying to take your business or step on anyone's toes, but I also don't want to advise you when you have another fiduciary essentially either. But if you're not represented by someone, you just go, hey, what do you think about? I'm like, I'm just going to tell you what I think. I don't, it's free advice. That tends to come back to you if you're really like I said, I really like helping people. I really want to educate them on things. So if they're asking me, I'm just going to, I think people are always, a lot of people in sales industries always think you're asking for an angle, or you're just trying to get business, or which is why I don't want my content on my social media to be 100% real estate. I want them to see my family. I want them to see all those things either, which is why I don't have a separate real estate like social media, like a Facebook page just for, I don't know. I want people seeing me. Yeah. I want them to know I do real estate. I don't want to be a secret agent. I want them to know that's what I do, but that's not who I am. I want them to see, and that's just worked for us. Yeah. I just think that philosophy in general.
I mean, what's been cool, I think, as the video has evolved, and by the way, this will help springboard you.
That's right.
Right now.
That's
right?
exactly right. Yeah, that's right.
But seriously, now you can just pick up your phone and record a message, a video message, and send that as the text. And I think that's just the extra layer of connection.
Yeah, I agree.
As opposed to just an analog,
I
Text,
100%. But like I said,
digital, whatever.
well, communication is not just verbal, right? Anytime they can see you and they can see that you're smiling, that
Yeah.
you're actually, they look like they're enjoying having a conversation or talking to me or whatever. I don't
We
know.
tell our kids this all the time, like having important conversations with people via text is a terrible idea. They don't know your tone. They don't know what you really mean by it. And our kids have been in things recently where I'm like, that should never have been a text message you sent, So I think that's also a good lesson in business and real estate specifically is if you send a video message, they not only hear how you're saying it, they see what you're saying and they see your face. So I think it's very important.
Yeah. And I'm a texter too, so I have to keep that in mind. Sometimes like that could have been a text, but I haven't spoken to this client in a week. You know what? I probably should just call them, right? Because you've just got to be cognizant of that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. That's all I think.
So, what's one piece of advice you would give to couples thinking about getting into real estate together?
You need to know yourselves really well as a couple and as individuals first before you choose to jump into real estate together. And then you have to know, can you be the couple that works from home together 90% of the time? Or do you all, like, we have an office we could go to. I go there for events and to grab things, but I don't really go there. So I think number one, you have to know yourself relationship wise and work wise. Because if you can't, you may be able to work together, but you may not be able to coexist together that long. I mean, we're with each other every
and I
week.
just think in that, like, I think we communicate pretty well. I mean, I think she's right. I think you've just got to know yourself. You've got to know your boundaries. You've got to know, hey, I probably need to step away for a minute. Like I said, anytime you say this, we're like, oh, we do this, we do this really well. Listen, there's always moments of friction, right? Like that, it's unavoidable. In anyone who's ever had a significant other, a marriage, or or a business partner, both of those things can come to a head. So, but when you have that close, more intimate relationship with your business partner as well, so things can here, you can't let them carry over to here. You can't let them carry over to things in front of the clients or any of that.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
We both know what we're good at. We both know what we're bad at. So,
Yeah.
he had some out of town clients in town this last week, and he was very good at scheduling everything. And I did this whole booklet for them, and he was like, I would never have done that. But the wife
made it
loved
pretty.
it. I'm like, I know how I am. I know that I like paper and I like to look at things. And the husband's like, very much like Ken, doesn't need that. But you just never know. That's the touch point that I'm good at, and that's he's good at
Very
a billion other
complimentary
things.
of one another.
Yeah,
That's what-
I mean, it really is. It's just complementarianism. That's real. I mean, that's essentially, we just kind of fill the little valleys that where I'm not good, she just kind of fills in.
It's almost like it's just like knowing what your love language is, right? I mean, and being able to touch on those with your partner / spouse or whatever it is, while you're working. Yeah.
It's a big one. What are your love languages?
Mine is probably physical
Primary.
touch.
Physical touch.
Yeah.
And what's the other one?
I don't know. You probably, hopefully,
It's quality time.
Quality time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd say that's probably right.
Yeah.
And hers is definitely acts of service,
Acts of service.
and quality time.
Yeah.
So the quality time being the secondary
That's super
one.
helpful.
I know
That really is helpful.
That
bodes well for your business.
I never
success.
put that together, Mark. Yeah, you're right. It probably does. If those weren't there, there might be more friction than there is in general. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Solo time is not necessarily a love language, but
No, that's right.
But there are 4 others. So yeah, with that being higher, that does make sense.
Yeah, that's funny.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, guys, thanks for coming on. This has been amazing.
Yeah, I've enjoyed
I really
it.
appreciate you guys sharing your story, and I'm excited to what goes on the rest of the year and see you guys just continue to fly.
Yeah, man. Thanks,
Great.
Mark.
Good to
Thank
see
you.
All right.
Appreciate
thanks.
it.
You're welcome.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. See you next time.